Hi, Griffin. Thank you for joining me tonight. I really enjoyed reading your narrative and looking at the revisions that you did. I like to start off by saying that I think you did a great job of creating background knowledge for the reader on what exactly a Lucis creature um, is. That definitely helps some understanding of what I'm reading about. And again, you did a great job letting the reader know that Soul is Eridan's soulmate because before it to a reader it was a little unclear as to exactly if he was just a friend, if he was a roommate, if he was a brother. So that you did a great job of making that clear to the reader. Again, you I know there was some confusion last time about what type of accent Eridan had, and I see you added that he has a natural sea dweller's accent. So, as a reader, I'm wondering, what does a sea dweller's accent sound like? Is there a way to describe that, or is that how he is talking in all of the dialogue you have? Is the repeating of certain syllables part of the Sea Dweller accent? If so, I'm wondering if maybe it would be beneficial to the reader if you added it somewhere up here in this paragraph before we even get to the dialogue of Eridan, so that the reader can really imagine and hear what Eridan sounds like. So again, that is going back to our second lesson of using sensory language. You always want to try to include um, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting for the reader. And then this was definitely helpful where the Raven is telling Eridan that he has a pure heart and he's able to have a pure heart, but he needs to make amends. So, um, I noticed that throughout your narrative, you use the phrase, gotta wake up, gotta wake up. So, and Eridan is thinking that he is awake, and then we see it again down here, the bird saying the same thing, that it's another dream and that Eridan needs to wake up. So, as a reader, it's a little bit confusing as to if Eridan is actually awake when all of this dialogue and conflict is happening, or is it actually a dream? So maybe I would recommend going back to lesson 5 that talked about revision and use the revision cards. Kelsey did a great job. She has cards for adding, rearranging, removing, and replacing. So I definitely don't think that you should remove the detail or replace it. I think that it needs to be added to it so that it's a little bit clearer as to if Eridan is actually awake this whole time or if he's dreaming. And um, that same question comes in with the movie. So you did a great job of adding a resolution to the story. We see as a reader, I see now that the conflict was over Eridan going to see a movie without Soul. And Soul was upset about that because they did everything together. And in order to make amends, Eridan needed to apologize, which he ended up doing. He was let off the hook and he was able to go back on his day. So, this detail of the movie, maybe consider using the revision cards and seeing where you can add that in back in the beginning of the story, because then you have that when Aradon is entering his home, maybe he's sheepishly entering his home because of what he had just done, which would have been seeing a movie without Soul, besides the fact that he forgot to tell him good morning. That's just a thought to play around with. Again, refer back to lesson 5. Kelsey did a great job of talking about all of your different options for revision, but I definitely think if the movie is the source of the conflict, that should be in the beginning of your narrative as well, and then bring it back into the end of the narrative to tie the action, the climax of your narrative together to the beginning and the end. And then so he'd finally settled his dispute, and he would now be able to get a good night's sleep. I'm wondering if this could work as your ending of your narrative, or if you had envisioned the ending as something else. Because bringing it back to the plants makes it seem like Aradon, to me as a reader, it seems like Aradon's plants was what all of the conflict and the fighting and the raven speaking was about. And based on your dialogue and your detail, it seems like it was more about something that Aradon did to Soul, and this bird is more of Aradon's conscience. So consider either using the revision cards to maybe remove this part and have this as your ending, or if this is important, again, use the revision cards for rearranging. That is also one of the strategies that is offered there. So if we look back at her revision cards, we see you can try adding, which you did a great job of. So that does not need to be touched, but maybe use the cards, and we're going to look at the lesson in a second to see how you could rearrange some of your details to really start with your beginning and then go into the end. So switching the order of the scenes up so that it is in order of importance. And you could also try replacing some of your descriptive language with shorter descriptions or different words. Just mess around with it to see how it can sound better and be more clear to the reader, as if in regards to if Aradon is actually awake or if he is sleeping, because it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. So sometimes I'm like, oh, he's definitely awake, and at other times I'm unsure, and then it seems like he is sleeping. And there's some things to keep in mind. Again, this is referring back to Kelsey's lesson on revision, is that adding in certain details really helps, which you did a great job of, but rearranging it also helps too. If you see here, Kelsey first has in her narrative, she's talking about the crowd being bigger than Kate, but Kate was older than her, and then she decides to rearrange it, talking about Kate and her personality first and what she predicted, and then going down into her thoughts and her feelings. It just added a better flow to the narrative. So there's some great writing prompts at the end for you to try, and I also think that writing past your using optional writing prompt 1 of writing past your ending with a couple more scenes will really help you make your final revision and decide if you want your ending to stay as it is or if it needs to be something else. And if you do end up deciding to do this optional writing prompt and you find a different ending that you like, then you can go back and use the revision cards once more to decide if there's anything from your original resolution that you need to take away or replace or rearrange. But overall, I think you definitely did an excellent job of clarifying some of the details. I noticed that you took away some details that you didn't need. You explained some things that were unclear using more descriptive language, and the biggest part, you added a resolution. You gave the reader a clear image in their head of what all of this fighting between the trolls was about. And then you showed the reader how Aradan was able to make it better, which is great use of imagery and your descriptive language and your sensory detail. As a reader, I can hear Aradan in a kind of pitiful voice saying that he is sorry to Sol and asking for his forgiveness. So overall, I think it is great. I really enjoyed reading your piece, and I can't wait to see what you come up with for next week.